Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome to Your Forest. I'm Matthew Christoph, and today I've got an awesome podcast for you guys about Pine Beetle. We're talking about Pine Beetle ecology, their life cycle, the nature of them, management, everything from A to Z. We talked about a lot of different stuff. I had Nadir, I'm going to destroy his last name, Erbilgin, and he is a professor at the University of Alberta. He's a professor of forest entomology and chemical ecology. He does research in plant defense against insects, pathogens, all kinds of entomology stuff. So he does a lot of research in mountain pine beetle. And he came on and we talked about everything and anything. So we started off very basics, talking about the size of these things, how they kill the tree, what their life cycle is, and then got into more complicated issues as time went on. It was really awesome. Nadir is a very knowledgeable guy. I really recommend you guys listen to the whole thing. It's awesome. And besides that, we have some sponsors. We have Green Lake Forestry doing resource inventory analysis for over 15 years in Alberta and elsewhere. Also, Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta. And also Damage Timber. Damage Timber is an apparel company in Edmonton, and they are trying to give back to the environmental sciences community through the sale of their clothing. They're taking 10% of what they get from the sale of their clothing and putting it towards a scholarship for environmental sciences. They'll be doing that, the first one in 2018 at the end here. He's also always doing all kinds of giveaways on Instagram and Facebook. If you guys want to check him out on Instagram and Facebook. The website is damagetimber.com. And if on your way out, if you put in the code YourForest10, you get 10% off. And he's always having sales. I know when he gets the sweaters in, he's going to be having a big sale. I think $20 for everything. So definitely go to damagetimber.com, check them out. And besides that, I hope you guys enjoy this one. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. It's always good to get a good refresher on pine beetle and the concerns that they have in the province and in the country. So, I hope you guys like it. And here is Nadir and I. I had Danny Chestnus on. I don't know if you remember Danielle. I graduated with her. She graduated in 2012 as well from the university, but she she was telling me a story when we were in school about pine beetle, and she had a woman from the public come up to her and ask her about, these pine beetle, like why aren't we doing more? Like, I don't understand why we don't just put fences around all the pine trees and keep all the pine beetle out, right? And Danny just kind of
it's not gonna do anything.
Yeah. Her head just kind of went sideways, and she kind of went, there's a million reasons why that's a horrible, horrible idea, and it wouldn't do a jack shit. So, I guess when it comes to the public, right? Like they have a lack of understanding of just the basic generalities of pine beetles.
Fair.
So
that's fair. You know, I don't expect them to understand everything. There are a lot of things going on now, right? The economy is not so good actually used to be, but they have their own priorities. Our job is I don't blame them actually. I blame us, academics, that they become so arrogant bastards. So they don't really go down and talk with the public. That's true.
Yeah,
that's very true. What can we do?
No, I agree. I said something to the same effect last night, saying that you can't blame the people for not understanding what forestry is.
Mistakes.
Yeah, it's our fault, not telling the truth.
Actually,
yeah, totally. So let's just start off talking about so pine beetle. I think people get confused that they think that maybe these things are these massive beetles that are chewing through trees and knocking them over or something. Like, I don't know what people think, but like pine beetle are really small. How small are pine beetles?
It's like a rice grain.
A rice grain size.
Yeah, 2 or 3, 4 millimeters. Not very big, yeah.
So really, really
Females
small.
tend to be bigger than the male.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because they are the one reproducing it.
Right, they're carrying the eggs and they're, okay. So, and pine beetle are native to Canada, right?
Absolutely. We have several pine beetle species, right? And then the mountain pine beetle is native to Western North America, I will say.
Okay.
But Alberta is facing a little bit more challenge now because beetles... We don't have any record of beetle attacks on Grand Prairie, for example.
Really?
Or Hinton.
Right.
Or Whitecourt, those areas.
Until recently.
Until recently, yeah.
Right. That's interesting that they never... So they're confined mostly to British Columbia in the past, and they managed to make their way into Alberta. It's interesting that... What do you think was keeping them in BC? And
the cold temperature was really the biggest issue. When the temperature was cold, the idea was that below -40 was inflicting huge mortality, but that is gone away right now. There's not much really much too cold to hold these beetles, limit their range, but
right.
As soon as global warming become an issue right now, these insects really took advantage of it. Plus, climate change is not really the only thing. We have aging forests right now. Our forest is more uniform in terms of species composition, in terms of height classes, and those are the really perfect conditions for beetles to utilize it.
So age classes as well.
Absolutely, right. Absolutely.
Okay.
We have even age class right now, and single species, large ball binders dominated landscape.
Yeah.
What else do beetle want? These are perfect conditions, actually.
Right.
Absolutely perfect conditions. You cannot do better than that as a human being.
Okay, so let's maybe get into, let's keep to the basics for now, and let's maybe talk about their life cycle and get people to understand why.
Are we recording right now or no?
Yeah, we're recording. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
Okay.
I just, like I said, I just started going.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, cool,
No.
cool.
Yeah. I'm looking at the levels. We're good. No, it's all good. Yeah. Let's just talk about the life cycle a little bit. Talk about. Yeah. Let's just start talking about the life cycle.
Life cycle. The beetle, mountain pine beetle, has a 1-year life cycle. That means that when the offspring emerges from their parental tree, and sometime in July, mid-July, beginning of July, and then they seek for new suitable host trees.
Okay.
They land on, they release aggregation pheromones. Pheromones are really important. These are the chemical signals to reach out other members of the same species. And then males respond to it.
Yeah.
They mate. Female lay oviposition galleries and lay eggs along the oviposition galleries. Within a few days, actually several days, eggs hatch and start feeding on the bark phloem.
Okay.
Phloem where
within a few days.
Oh yeah, several days usually.
Okay.
I will say 10 to 15 days, even less, depending on the temperature, really.
Oh, okay.
I've seen cases that within 10 days, they emerge under laboratory conditions, even earlier.
Really? They'll emerge from the tree and start chewing on the bark?
Exactly, yeah. They are inside the bark already anyway.
Yeah.
And then they go to several developmental stages, larval stages, and then the following year, sometime in April, May, they pupate, and then after a short pupation period, depending on the temperature too, and they emerge in June, July time and start seeking the new host trees, and this cycle repeats every year.
Okay, so
they always find the new trees, because the trees that female, their mother and father lay eggs, they had to be killed by beetles. Otherwise, mortality is really essential for these insects to reproduce. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a problem.
Right. So I think that's another weird thing. So first of all, these beetles, so the parent beetles, after they've laid the eggs, they just kind of die right after that? Or
no, they stay for a while. Actually, there are some indications that they might lay eggs multiple times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, multiple times.
In the same tree? Or
in the same tree. There are some people say same tree, but all different trees. Sometimes go find another host trees.
Okay.
But I've seen cases that, female beetles abandon their oviposition trees. This suggests indirectly that they probably seeking for additional trees, but I don't have any hard evidence for that. That's really a few anecdotal observations here and there.
Gotcha. Okay. And then another thing I think that's really confusing for people is, how does something so small manage to kill a tree? Right? Like you said, it's the size of a grain of rice. How the hell is it killing a tree? So
absolutely excellent, fascinating questions. There are two ways that beetles kill trees, not just mountain pine beetle. We have several tree-killing bark beetle species throughout the world. They have the same protocols. First, mass aggregation. In order to overcome the tree defenses.
So what does that mean?
Mass aggregations triggered by the aggregation pheromones. Mass aggregations are bringing tons of individuals at the same time on the tree, and the tree reacts, but eventually, they bring more individuals, and tree give up.
So they're just chewing,
exhaust the pre-defenses. Exactly. They shut down that's the one mechanism. So I want to put together both of them together at the end. The second mechanism is they introduce fungi. All bark beetle species, tree-killing bark beetle species, are associated with several pathogenic fungal species. What these fungi do, they attack the xylem. and the sapwood. What the sapwood does in the tree, they carry the nutrients, water from the roots to the foliage.
Right.
And the beetle attacks concentrated on the phloem. Phloem carries the nutrients from the tree canopy to the roots.
Right.
So
the beetle's chewing out the phloem.
Oh yeah, that's what they do.
And
it's
the fungus takes over the xylem.
The xylem, exactly. And then this is a really good tree killing mechanisms, right? It's a perfect combination. And then
be the equivalent of just like
cutting your throat.
Yeah.
Holding your throat that you cannot breathe.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You die. You know, it's easy to kill people if
yeah.
you just...
so it's girdling the tree, basically.
The tree. Exactly what they do. Exactly what they do. Girdling the tree is all about the numbers, really.
Right.
You know, I have to say beetle have two population densities overall, endemic and epidemic. Endemic densities, they cannot kill or they cannot take the challenge to kill a tree because they don't have enough numbers.
Okay.
There are a few beetles.
Okay.
But, and the epidemic, you know, the population reach high levels, then that the tree killing becomes an issue right now. We exactly seen in BC, US, and in Alberta that millions of trees can be killed instantly, actually. So based on those two mechanisms.
Right. So with the fungus, so how long does it take for the fungus to take hold and actually plug up the xylem?
Fungal infection really start 2-3 weeks right after the beetle inoculations. But the important thing is that when the beetle attack, they start feeding on the phloem and then exhausting tree defenses.
Right.
You know, trees are not stupid. They are not stupid. They are highly defended. They contain a lot of toxic chemicals. Actually, that's what my lab work on. Those toxic chemicals can kill beetles instantly.
Really?
That's why, you know, when the beetle numbers are low, they cannot attack the healthy trees.
Right.
Because they will be killed 100% no matter what.
So it's not like one beetle can attack a pine tree and kill it. You need lots of them.
Lots of them. No, you need hundreds of the beetles.
Okay.
And, you know, we have absolutely no idea when the initially when the beetles attack the trees, some of them die, I'm sure of it.
Right.
They release pheromone, others come, or they respond to the aggregation pheromones. But we don't know what percentage of trees are really, the insects are killed at the initial stages. But we always see that at the end, that the one that survived and the one that lay eggs on the tree.
Right.
We always see the end product. But I would estimate that the mortality should be really high at the initial stages of tree colonization.
Right. Okay, so does the beetle need to kill the tree to survive?
Absolutely.
Or it does?
In order to reproduce.
In order to reproduce.
Reproduction,
not to survive,
you have to kill the entire tree or a portion of the tree. We called, you know, some portion of the trees, they kill it just south portion, for example, south side of it, and they lay eggs. The other sides of the tree still functioning, but some cases, but many cases actually they kill the entire tree. They have to kill it, otherwise they won't reproduce. Because healthy tree means they can produce defensive compounds, toxic compounds. So larvae cannot survive under toxic conditions. So that's why they have to make sure that tree has to be killed in order to continue their regeneration.
Huh. That's interesting. I didn't know that trees made toxic. I knew, like, I thought it was just the sap pushing them out. Like, it was just gumming them up and pushing them out.
No. Pushing up is one mechanism. Trees have a lot of different chemicals in their arsenal, and those chemicals are really, really toxic to beetle and the fungus and the bacteria that the beetles carry. They are really toxic chemicals. No, they cannot challenge with this is the really beautiful things, you know, when we visited Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
We saw so many dead trees.
Yeah.
Thousands of them. But there are some individuals survived.
Uh-huh.
You know, we investigated those trees and how do they survive. We have some hypotheses and we published some papers on that. It's really interesting. No matter how many beetles attack, these trees survive, man. How many years they attack. In Alberta, in Grand Prairie, mortality started from 2006. And these trees survive, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and they're still alive.
Yeah.
And you can see the evidence of a lot of attacks on these trees. You can see it when you remove the bark. Oh, there you go, beetle stuck.
Yeah.
It's killed. Trees start healing it. These trees are really precious. They're really precious because they have a proven record of survival.
That's fascinating.
They can challenge the beetles. Absolutely.
So what's how many tree genetic types of trees are that resistant to beetle? Like what,
they tend to be very, very low. You know, in many cases, we cannot really say, you know, There are 3 types of trees remaining in forest. Pine trees, I would say. First, dead trees. The second one, those trees that were attacked but survived.
Right.
And they're rare. And the third category is that be trees that never attacked.
Right.
So, depending on the severity of outbreaks, some areas you will find 100% mortality, almost 100% mortality. In other areas that you will find about 10, 20%, 30% mortality. Beetle didn't really kill every single tree in the stand. They attacked, kill numbers, and they fly. They have this dispersal idea that wired in their genes, really. Right. We don't know much about it, but as soon as they emerge, they tend to disperse long distance. Long distance, could be a couple of kilometers, or could be 100, 200 kilometers or something like that, or longer, depending on the individual species. We have no idea what governs to insects to disperse, but nevertheless, they disperse. So you will see those kind of few trees that either attack survived or never attacked at all on the landscape. They're the second category is we call residual trees. They tend to be more common than the trees that were attacked and survived.
Right. So specific genotypes, or I guess it's not like it's the goal of the pine beetle to kill all of the trees everywhere. It's like it just needs to kill the one tree to survive and move on. It's not like they're trying to take over. It's just that there's an epidemic of them, like you said. There's so many of them that they just happen to be killing all of the trees in the area. Yeah,
exactly. When they reach epidemic, they become less discriminant in terms of attacking the trees and attacking what kind of trees they attack. Endemic trees, and then when the beetle populations are low, they usually attack very stressed trees that almost dying.
Right.
Or infected with the pathogens, or Western gold rust, or something like that, or malaria. But when the numbers reach the high levels, then they can take very big trees because they have numbers.
Right.
They rely on the numbers.
So do they recognize that, or is it just a fluke?
Well, we have really no evidence. Again, how do they recognize the presence of old beetles? My hypothesis is that when the female beetle initiate attacks, not the male in mountain pine beetle, when she released the pheromone, depending on the response she got, I believe that is the one triggering for entire epidemic process. But I have no evidence for that. This is based on my observations.
Okay.
Based on the last 20 years of field work, actually.
Gotcha. So I think one thing that's really interesting about the fungus, the blue stain fungus specifically with mountain pine beetle, is that you can see it in the lumber, right? In mountain pine beetle killed stuff, people will be walking through Home Depot or whatever and go, why is this board light blue, right? Like, what the hell is that? And if you guys see that, that's what that is. Yeah.
It is exactly. They carry a lot of fungus, different fungal species, actually. The beetles also carry the bacteria. Remember, these fungus is not just helping the beetles to kill the trees, they're also providing nutrients. If overall trees, especially conifers, they are very low in nitrogen.
Okay, nitrogen, yeah.
And exactly what these fungus do, they bring the concentrated nitrogen along the beetle gallery. So larvae, when they're feeding on the phloem, they also feed on the fungal spores. Propagules contains nitrogen. That's also a benefit. If you take away the nitrogen and the fungi from the beetle galleries, the beetle survival will be really, really low. And you're going to emerge tinier, smaller beetles.
What an amazing relationship, eh?
It's a symbiotic relationship. Both of them benefits from one another.
Symbiotic relationships blow my mind. Like it's beautiful when you really think about it. The fact that nature has, I don't think, most likely neither the beetle nor the fungus has any idea that they're helping each other out so much, but it's perfectly balanced. It's incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another beautiful things this fungi do is they can detoxify the toxic chemicals. It's proven already.
The ones from the trees, you mean?
From the tree, exactly. Yeah. When they attack it, they help the beetles to shut down the tree defenses. The mechanism is really, they can take the toxic chemicals, detoxify it, and make it less eatable chemical for the beetles. So less harmful, I will say.
Oh, okay.
So again, there are multiple benefits that this fungi provide to beetles. Besides the fungi, the beetles also have bacteria. This bacteria is also very, very interesting. They also have a defensive components, but our understanding the role of bacteria in tree colonization or tree killing process, we don't have. It's very limited.
Okay.
Very limited. But we doing some work on this bacterial aspect too, but it's really, really fascinating. A single beetle, I will say, individual beetle, is considered as a community.
Okay.
They have a bacteria, they have a fungi, they have a yeasts. We don't understand. We have no idea what the yeasts do. Mites they carry. Is a really community.
Huh.
And they have sometimes nematodes on their mycangia.
Nematode
is a very tiny, like earthworms, very tiny, and they also feed on the fungi itself.
Huh.
But we don't have much understanding the role of nematodes either. But it is a really community.
That's
it's
wild.
Really wild. Yeah.
One beetle can have all of that going on
Exactly.
it. Yeah. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's nature really is beautiful when you think about everything that's going on to try and make this
balance.
thing work. Yeah, it's wild.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding is that they historically pine beetle only really fed on lodgepole pine, correct?
In Alberta, in BC, yes.
In BC, yes.
But there are ponderosa pine.
There is, okay.
This pine species, this beetle species, feeds on about almost all tree species in its range, from British Columbia to all the way to Mexico.
Okay.
All the Pacific Northwest trees.
All the pine trees.
Except a couple of them, there are some exceptions. Perhaps Jeffrey pine. Pinus jeffreyi, may not be so much suitable for the mountain pine beetle, because another beetle species that attacked Jeffrey pine beetle, that pretty much shut down the mountain pine beetle.
Okay.
Besides that, most tree species, native or introduced, seems to be susceptible to the mountain pine beetle in its range. No, there are several species actually, over about 10, 19 species of pine beetles. Pine trees are susceptible to mountain pine beetle. But lodgepole pine is one of the most dominant tree species, right?
Gotcha.
And that's the reason that we hear more, but otherwise whitebark pine is susceptible. Limber pine, sugar pine, ponderosa pine, those are beautiful, beautiful pine species actually. They are susceptible.
They're all susceptible to mountain pine beetle.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
Because I know there was a concern originally when pine beetle started coming to Alberta that they would spread into jack pine, and that people were saying that they were having a hard time getting into jack pine, surviving and propagating and continuing generations. What was going on there? Why was that the case?
That's really interesting questions. Province of Alberta actually found several infected trees, but the numbers were very low.
Okay.
Numbers were low, and suggesting that, somehow, remember, the nearest forest from Laklabish to the Whitecourt is about 150 kilometers or something. That's a long distance. If you look at the Alberta, pine forest gets narrower actually after Whitecourt and almost disappear before Laklabish, and the pine population is very scarce.
Right.
Basically, very few trees here and there. They're not going to do it. The distance is pretty far. That's the one reason that beetles cannot utilize it, cannot aggregate properly. When for example, one beetle attack jack pine trees, when they release the pheromone, very few individuals might respond to it. That's why they cannot really initiate an outbreak.
I see.
There is a bottleneck, basically, due to geographical distance to the nearest infestation. I believe most of the things happening right now in jack pine, most of them are really beetles are migrating from west to east, not the other way around. I don't think so far. Beetles might be sustaining its population, but it's very, very low level.
Okay, that's interesting. So there's nothing to do really with the physiology of jack pine. It's just it's just the location of them. They're just too far away from the population. Okay, interesting.
Otherwise, jack pine is a susceptible host. That's my program actually at the U of A, focuses on jack pine suitability. That's why we investigate. One of the topics that we heavily investigate. It seems very, very suitable.
Okay,
very suitable.
Another thing that was something that was interesting to me was that pine beetle has to get it into a certain size of tree in order to survive. Correct? To survive the winter. So what's going on there? What is it about the mature trees that allow the pine beetle to survive, and what is it about the young trees?
Thick flow. That's it. It's all about that. Beetles cannot reproduce on the trees in traditionally about 14 centimeters at the DBH.
Okay.
Or 15 centimeters, because large trees provide
14 centimeters at breast height.
At the breast height,
yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
One thing is the size of the bark. When the trees get bigger, their outer corky bark gets thicker. That means a good winter insulation. And there's also larger trees means larger, thicker phloem where they feed on. Think about this. Phloem is already 2-3 millimeters on those big trees, not really more than 3 millimeters. And the smaller trees, the sizes is lower than 15 centimeters. That is like a thin paper. That same thickness is not good for the beetle. They cannot reproduce on that. That's why they usually go to trees with the larger,
bigger trees.
Big trees. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. For some reason, I had a misconception that it's something to do with the antifreeze capabilities in a bigger tree versus a small tree. I don't know why I thought that, but
antifreeze compounds is called ergosterol. It's come from the fungi.
Oh, okay.
Fungus provides those compounds. In fact, you asked exactly, we investigate in this issue right now. Overall, the trees itself doesn't have ergosterol. When the trees are attacked by fungus, they produce those ergosterol. Is another benefit that fungus provide for beetles. This ergosterol is like your antifreeze in the cars.
Okay.
Exactly, lower down the threshold for freezing point for these beetles.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It lowers the threshold. That makes sense. Okay. Interesting. So there's nothing physiologically either. It's just literally the size of the bark and the size of the phloem that allows the beetle to. So that's why you don't see them in. So you said 14 centimeters. So
14, 15 centimeters.
Okay. So
yeah. This is based on the lodgepole pine.
That's pretty small.
It is small.
That's pretty small.
But when they are desperate, they can attack it. They won't reproduce it. That we call it dead end. But nevertheless, they can still kill the trees. Trees. That's exactly happening in BC. In Prince George, for example, they were so desperate they couldn't find suitable hosts. They even attacked spruce trees, white spruce, Engelmann spruce.
They survived?
Oh yeah. No. They survive. We can see the evidence, but nevertheless, they attack and killed. Right. That's what we care sometimes. There are some indication actually the trees survive on the spruce trees.
Really?
But those are really rare events. But nevertheless, these beetles have a really good surviving strategies.
Do you think it's just because there's so many of them and
they're desperate?
Yeah.
They're desperate. If you go to field, probably they will attack you too.
Yeah.
Try to eat. What's going on here?
So what is the reproduction rate like? Like how much? So one female can reproduce how many?
It really changes perhaps up to 150, but
50
larvae, but most of them die for either some fungal infections or cold or something like that. Some other or predators eat them or parasitoids feed on them. I will say easily, really, each beetle during the epidemic period, easily they produce 30 to 40 beetles per pair.
Like viable offspring that'll move on and infect other trees. 30
this
to 40.
Is based on the number of emergence holes that we counted on the dead trees. And that is really not unrealistic estimation, 30, 40 at least, and it could be 70 emergence per pair.
That's insane. So it's realistically if the environmental conditions, climatic conditions are right, it's an exponential growth. Like they're just
it's more than exponential growth. Yeah. It's just crazy growth, actually. I don't know. It's just
like 70 times every generation. It's just
even miss it 2 times or 3 times, you can see the impact in short run. But this is 70 times means that beetle numbers. We're talking about trillions of beetles. Really, within a short time, they can generate it.
Wow,
so crazy.
It is wild.
Yeah.
So, what are the like in BC, like what was the impact in BC? How much of their growing stock was killed by beetle? Do you know?
Well, based on the published records, they're talking about 80%.
80% of the growing stock died.
That's exactly the pine, beautiful pine forest in the central BC is pretty much wiped out. Tree mortality is one thing. We know that beetles can kill trees, but the question is what happens in post-beetle era, right? Stand conditions. Those are the really one make us more desperate because in some areas, for example, in Alberta, we found rarely areas that pine can regenerate in post-beetle kill stands.
Really?
They cannot generate it. We have a very thick moss layers. Underground. The fire is the essential component. If you don't, the fire is not going to be introduced. Or you're going to remove it and plant it. Those are the really 2 options we have. Not much. It is really not just Alberta. BC is exactly suffering from the same issue. pine regeneration is a problem right now in beetle kill stands.
So what is it about the moss layer, the thick moss layer, that it just can't get to mineral soil?
Exactly. When the seed comes down from the cone, basically, they land on the moss layer and fed by the squirrels and other stuff or insects, basically cannot never reach the... And I'm telling you, we done several sites, 30, 40 sites around Grand Prairie, south of Grand Prairie, all the way to the Manning. And number of seedlings we found in our plots is less than 10.
Really?
Absolutely, you know.
And how many?
Ellen McDonald, so I assume she talked about that issue because she's the one that we joining working together with her.
I'm not sure if we did.
Okay, yeah, no, this is we working together. This project funded by FRI.
So how big were the plots?
20 by 20 meters.
20 by 20.
And we have
less than
62 plots.
62 plots, and you found less than 10 in each plot?
No, total.
In total?
Total, yes, that's nothing, my friend.
Well, to put that in perspective, if we had, say we had a burn come through in a pine stand like that, in that same plot, what would you expect to come back?
You will find easily 2,000, 3,000.
Per plot?
Oh, yeah.
Per plot. And and you got less than one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I would say 200, 300, sorry. I'm talking about per hectare, you will easily get that numbers. But per plot is, you will easily get 200, 300.
300, and you got less than one per plot because
you won't even have one.
That's wild.
We have a lot of spruce trees that's popping up, though. Spruce generation is coming up really, really strong. So you're gonna have aspen and poplar, and then balsam poplar, especially coming. Some other herbaceous plants are really, really dominant right now in the forest. Yeah.
So you're going to see. So there's a high probability we're going to see a total changeover of the type of forest that are
unless
in central
there is some intervention. Yes, we will most likely see spruce. Mixed with the pine, mixed with some hardwood trees, you will see. I don't think you will ever see dominant pine forest in beetle-affected areas.
Wow,
I really doubt it. Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
In the future, yeah.
Huh? Yeah, that's crazy because it's amazing that something so small can just become such a huge epidemic and take over such a huge. So 80% of the growing stock in Central British. So what year did it jump over into Alberta, roughly? I know it was
2006, roughly 2005, 2006. That really we see the big Reddit-dotted areas in the provincial forest system.
So what was special about 2006 that allowed them to make the trip over?
Well,
over the mountains. I'm guessing.
I'm sure we didn't really talk about it or we didn't really observe. I'm sure there is a smaller immigration took place before 2006. We see 2006 because after 2006 we see large number of tree mortality in Grand Prairie.
So they've probably been here quite a few years.
Oh yeah, that's my guess. Or smaller numbers attacked, but one or two trees or few trees may not get attention, may not be noticed, but the numbers become thousands, then you will notice. How did that beetle come? Is wind pattern, most likely.
Wind pattern.
They utilize it because they have to pass the Rocky Mountains, right? It's really a big challenge. The only way, really explanation, the beetles use the wing and then landed on the Grand Prairie.
Yeah, I remember somebody hypothesizing, and I don't know where I'm remembering this from. This could have been from over 12 years ago, that the beetles somehow managed to get into the jet stream is really low. Yep. They managed to get into the jet stream, and that's how they managed to travel a couple hundred kilometers over the mountains into Grand Prairie.
That makes sense, yeah. They've done these things since 2006. They done these things in 2009. I'm sure they're doing it in a smaller scales now from BC. We have a good active populations now in Jasper, right, in Hinton. Yeah. I think population is a little bit drying out in Grand Prairie. We still see the beetles killing few trees here and there, but the numbers are not very high compared to before. Same as the Whitecore area, but Hinton is the Jasper is the I would say mortality center right now. Okay,
so before 2006, pine beetle wasn't like. Was it in Alberta, just not prominent, or was it not in Alberta?
Well, it was in Alberta, but the southern Banff area, I will say, west of Rocky Mountain House, west of Calgary. I would suspect that beetles endemic those areas.
So it was never further
Never further, not the Grand Cache, not the Grand Prairie, no. Those are really more recent events that we don't have a record of any beetle infestation in those areas.
Interesting. Because like in the foothills, there's a lot of pine there, and it's interesting that the pine beetle never made it that far.
That's
over.
very interesting. You ask. That's a very interesting point. Somehow, when the beetle attack initiated, they attacked the Grand Prairie. There were also some epidemic going on went on in the Banff area, but somehow the Hinton area skipped. The beetles skipped those areas and they went up because the beetles not only come from the west to east, also come from south to north, north to south, south to north. Yeah. That is, and then skip the Hinton area right now. They're focused on Hinton.
Right. Interesting. So it's still not. There still is an epidemic. They still are running rampant in the province, or
they are still absolutely. Okay. There is no doubt about it. And so what's going to happen this year after Jasper National Park epidemic? So I don't know.
Right.
I suspect we will start seeing more red attack trees in Hinton, but I'm very curious what's going to happen this year. This year is going to be very essential.
Really? Okay.
But there are good beetle numbers in the national park.
Okay, so the national park is where a lot of them are right now. Yeah. Okay.
And they come from BC.
Right.
They travel through the BC.
So what are some of the management strategies for this kind of thing? Because I remember when I first got into forestry when I was in university for summer, I was doing layout, and we started doing, that was when the surge cuts came into play, right? So I would take a cut block that was supposed to be 10 hectares or something like that, and they said, just keep following the pine, and I would turn that cut block into 50 hectares because they need to try and that was a strategy that was approved by the government, and to try and stop the beetles in their tracks. Mm-hmm. And I know there was slash and burn programs that were being done. There was pheromone stuff. So maybe you want to go into what was being done and what was effective, what didn't work.
I would say the most effective management really when the beetle populations are endemic level.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When they're low, I believe we can locally make beetles extinct.
Right. When not trillions of them. Yeah.
Yeah. When they reach the epidemic level, you can really do little. Right. Because of the cost-benefit analysis, you have to consider that one, right? Mm-hmm. When you're talking about hundreds of thousands of trees spread out throughout the different places in the province, I'm not sure anyone can afford to remove it. In most cases in BC, let them go.
Yeah.
They cannot really control millions of trees. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You cannot. So you have to have priorities.
Yeah.
What are the priorities? I think one of the provincial priorities is really pretty much to stop or slow the spread of the beetle to east.
Right.
The provinces like Saskatchewan, Manitoba, they have a big, large jack pine component in their forest. What else? What are the slow the spread of the beetles? Really, if you see a few individual attacks here and there, you just cut and burn them. That's the really biggest strategy, single tree attacks.
Right. I'm
not sure anyone can do anything about that. The stand level really is talking about multiple stands throughout the different places. Mm-hmm. Not much we really can do about it.
Well, that's the interesting thing about the slash and burn too, is because you think that, okay, we'll fly in a helicopter and we'll look and we'll see, there's a tree, there's some trees that are dead, right? And you go down there and you cut and burn them. The problem is the ones that are dead, they've been vacant of beetles for 5 years.
Oh, yeah, exactly. When I mentioned before, the beetle have a 1-year life cycle. Mm-hmm. When they attack July, August, and they emerge in next year, June, July, that's it.
Yeah.
You might see the changes in the color, in the foliage. It was usually green, from the pale green to lemonish green, and then become red,
right,
and then gray. When you see the red, means that beetles emerged.
Yeah.
That's it. There is no need to deal with those trees, really.
Yeah, they're gone. Yeah.
They're gone.
So how would you go about identifying beetle attack trees while the beetles are still in the tree, like before they've moved?
You have to do it before emergence. It's very difficult.
So you gotta do it the winter time?
It's very difficult to doing it aerially.
Right.
But on the
is
ground
it possible
level,
to do aerially?
I believe it is. It is. I don't think anyone really focused on that subject. Perhaps some people at the UBC might be doing it, or U of A. But as in terms of remote sensing, there's not much changes in the color of foliage. They are still green.
Right.
Especially, I'm talking about early spring. If you go to late summer, then you might see the changes in the color become very, very light green from the perfect green, flashy green to the light green, before you even get the red. Red is indicating usually 2 years. Right? 2 years after beetle attacks.
So I imagine you have to be very, very tuned in to the different colors of pine to know exactly what is probably beetle attack and what is just a normal variation.
You might still see the changes, but those are really subtle. You have to have a good eye on them, especially if you're using helicopter. But in the ground, you can definitely see when your pitch tubes are really the best examples of attack trees, successful attack trees.
So literally walking through the trees and finding the holes in the trees where the pitch is coming out from, that's evidence that there's been beetle attack. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. But in the late summer, depending on the water conditions, right, when the tree is attacked by girdled by the beetles and the fungus, fungi, what do? The water movement from the roots to foliage slows down.
Okay.
But never ends. As long as there's a water in the soil, the tree is still going to pump water. That's why they can maintain that green foliage. If you take away the water, I can tell you you'll see the changes in color immediately, a lot faster than before summer comes. Because
you were saying that it's the fungus that takes over the xylem, which is the water transportation, and that takes, I'm guessing before it's totally girdled that potential, it probably takes a few years. So that's why it takes years for it to turn red and die.
Okay. At least, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So we've talked about slash and burn. So what about the surge cutting program? Do you know much about that? Was that proven to be effective at slowing the spread?
I think so. You got the idea is that remove the potentially suitable trees. Usually they tend to be the large trees
before the beetle gets there.
Before it gets into it, exactly, and then I believe that is effective. I don't know really how effective it was. I don't have any data.
There's no studies on that?
Anything. I think some people might be doing it. I really don't know much about it. But my initial guess is yes, this could be an effective strategy, but limited. Limited in a case that, when you consider the mills companies, they can travel certain distance. To harvest the trees and bring it back. If these trees, surge cut is really far away from the mills, I don't think they will go and get it because, again, the cost-benefit analysis doesn't allow them to do it. So those trees still standing there. Then province, I think we need to find out if those trees not going to be harvested, what needs to be done. Perhaps it's introducing fire, prescribed fire as a tool might be useful because there's no economic benefit at least those trees that are expected at the provincial level.
So it's still a huge concern for the forest industry and the health of the forest in general that these beetles might still take over and kill. Like what's the percentage of beetle kill in the province right now in Alberta?
Alberta tend to have 6 million hectare of forest, and then I think 1 million sort of affected.
1 million affected?
Yeah.
So 6 million hectares of pine forest and 1 million affected.
Yeah,
so
roughly.
Not even close to the 80% that central British Columbia felt. But
no, our impact is a lot less than BC. But remember that BC is bigger and their forest is more continuous than ours.
Ours is
especially
more broken
out. Ours is more distributed a little bit here and there, especially east to west division. We have a really jack pine versus lodgepole pine. We have a big gap farmlands over there, or the aspen land. BC doesn't have it. BC is pretty much everywhere is the forest from south to north end.
Does climatic conditions play a role there too between BC and Alberta?
Of course, the Alberta tend to be more colder than BC.
So that helps.
That helps a little bit in the past at least. Right now, we might be losing that climate advantage because beetles can survive really well in Alberta too.
Yeah. And climate change is an issue, of course, with everything in the forest industry today, right? It comes to it's everybody I have on. Seems like everybody I bring onto the podcast, eventually it comes down to climate change, and it is a thing, and it's going to cause some serious problems, and it's going to be interesting to see what the forest of the future is going to look like for sure.
Well, it's a reality. Whatever the causes, this and that is a reality. I don't think we can bury our heads in the sand and ignore it. There is no problem. It is a problem. It is a problem from a scientific perspective. It's happening. You don't really need to go dig more evidence. The best way is the most reasonable approach is to develop some protocols, some ideas how to deal with that instead of just ignoring the problem, because ignoring the problem is not going to make the problem go away.
No.
It's going to stay here.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And things are getting worse, actually. Climate change is really, really getting worse. It's all the predictions what we had before, we already reached there,
So I guess one of the other things was what was the use of hormone traps in relation to management of pine beetle?
The pheromone traps.
The pheromone traps, sorry.
Pheromones, okay. The pheromones, again, these are the chemicals that produced by insects, right? The mountain pine beetle has aggregation pheromones. Both female beetle release aggregation pheromones, and the male beetles release different aggregation pheromones.
Okay. What's the purpose of the male releasing pheromones?
The same. Same purpose, bring more male and female. Female aggregation pheromones bring both male and females. Male aggregation pheromones tend to bring more male, but still females respond to it.
So the males is more just hey, I found a good tree, come over here.
Exactly. Remember, the aggregation is really, mass colonization is their strategy to kill the trees. One of the two strategies, otherwise they cannot take over the entire tree.
Right.
There are other types of pheromones. Let me explain what the overall, how the pheromone works in the trees, and then I will explain the management implications.
Absolutely.
Besides these aggregation pheromones, the beetles have also anti-aggregation pheromones. When they reach a certain threshold on a tree in terms of numbers, right, what they're going to do, they cannot start chewing themselves, right? So they have to stop attacks.
So how does the beetles know? How do they know that this tree's
pot really is another idea. We cannot really know. Well, how do they? But overall, this is the trend. When the beetles mate, female and males, their pheromone production lasts about 2-3 days. Aggregation pheromone production. After 2-3 days, they start producing anti-aggregation pheromones. I believe that is the one. The mating is, in my mind, is triggering this process. Because the female pheromone production at the beginning is really high. After mating, it goes down.
Yeah.
The male production goes higher before mating, after mating. But after that, it goes down, and at the end, they start producing aggregation pheromone we call verbenone.
So it's more of just a time thing in relation.
It's a time thing, yes.
More than hey, we notice there's way too many beetles here. It's just that.
I believe in mating triggers that process, and after mating, the time starts. Within 3-4 days, they start producing less aggregation pheromones and more anti-aggregation pheromones. Is all about stopping the beetles coming to the tree, so they can attack the trees next to it.
So what would be the problem if you had too many beetles in one tree?
Competition.
Just competition.
Competition is not good. One tree is, especially the tree death is secured. 1,000 beetles versus 10,000 beetles. Which one get the more benefit? 1,000 beetles will get more benefit because they have more phloem tissues to eat. But otherwise, their larvae. No, the larvae occupy large areas. They're really hungry. Right. They eat a lot. Think about it. Some females might lay up to 200, 300 eggs, and they start feeding on. I'm talking about. In some cases, we've seen this gallery is about 30, 40, 50 centimeters long on their bark. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? It's very important that we have a good understanding how the system operates.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So so the galleries are what you call galleries where the beetle goes in, and that's where they're chewing out. And if you were to peel the bark back, you'd see a bunch of lines
That's exactly
underneath the bark, and that's the gallery, right? So
the female gallery is different than larval galleries. Female gallery is vertical, usually J shape. At the bottom of J, really, they mate, male and female. And the female excavate the galleries. The purpose of the male is clean the galleries. When the female start chewing, the male take the gallery, those dusts, kick out from the entrance hole.
They literally don't.
They
eat
work
it.
together. They never eat it. They pass through. They take some of the nutrients, but no. This is all about the larva. And after, when the female established the gallery, she lay eggs in both sides of the gallery is about 2-3 millimeter in diameter, about 2-3 millimeter in depth, depending on the phloem thickness. And they lay eggs. She lay eggs in both sides of the gallery walls, and they emerge and they travel perpendicular to their mother's galleries. Perpendicular, literally. Right. So you will see a lot of lines on the vertical lines and then horizontal lines expanding, and that lines get thicker and thicker when the larva gets bigger and bigger.
Okay, so how much, if you had to say like the distance of, say you had like one female and all her progeny, all the larvae that survived, how much of the phloem could they cover? Yeah, of a tree.
Okay, let's assume that if the female excavates 30 centimeter gallery, and then each side of the wall, I will say another 10 centimeter in each. So I will say 30 by 20. centimeter rectangle.
Not a huge area. So,
but this is only a single pair.
That's one pair.
Yes,
so then if you
and
get
multiply
1,000,
with there we go.
So you start to get to 1,000 and then to 10,000, and you literally start to overlap, and there's not enough.
That's exactly. They don't want so many beetles. Trust me. Competition is their competition within a species with another beetles, their biggest enemy. You don't want to. They don't do competition.
This just popped in my head. I've never thought about this before, but would a female, like, say there was some overlap, say there was two females too close together, two pairs too close together inside the tree under the bark, and they ran into each other, would they start competing? Like, the
larvae is definitely competing one another.
I mean more.
They try to avoid it. Female beetles try to avoid meeting together. They were never going to meet under the same gallery. But they're not. They have a different entrance holes. As soon as they feed on, they always go perpendicular, right up to towards the tree.
So the larvae might run into each other.
The larvae might run each other, not the females. No.
Okay, but if larvae run into each other, do they start fighting or something? I'm imagining two little larvae.
I believe they compete for the resources. Right. The phloem is all about the most valuable resource. It's also, they bring their own fungus. Fungus also, not all tissues that colonized by fungus are eatable by the larva. So you're asking very good questions. I don't think I have a really good grasp of how they I don't think they chew each other, but they might indirectly affect one another.
Just through competition of resources, not through direct physical.
No. Other beetle species, wood-boring beetles, their larvae can eat mountain pine beetle larvae. There is some good evidence for that, but not the mountain pine beetle larva.
Okay, interesting.
And then come back to your original questions about hormones. Right. So depending on what you want to do, you want to bring the insects, your traps or your trap trees, or you're going to repel the beetles. So if you want to bring the insects to the target tree, you can bait a tree, for example, with aggregation pheromone. You can bring hundreds of beetles on a tree. Right. And you can go and cut these trees, remove it. Basically, you get rid of it. But this is effective when the beetle populations are low. But if it's there is zillions of beetles out there. If you remove a couple of thousand, who cares?
Right.
The other mechanisms we call anti-aggregation pheromones. If you have a few valuable trees, you can bait with these anti-aggregation pheromones. These trees will send the signals that these trees are occupied, false signals, and then sort of beetles won't attack them, basically.
So it's definitely not a large scale.
We done in large scales when I was in California. We did through the helicopter spraying or plane spraying.
Can you spray an area?
Oh yeah, you can do it. Yes, you can do. You need to have application techniques. When I was there, we have developed techniques called about 2 or 3 millimeter sandwich. Plastics, actually, flex, and then the chemicals stored inside, and you can spray it through the aerially. Yeah. And then tend to be effective when the beetle population is low to medium, but when the beetle population is so high, I don't think so. We done a lot of work with ponderosa pine and then white bark pine. Because those are really valuable tree species ecologically, and then we got some mixed results. I think there are some new techniques, but it's more labor intensive. Individually, you have to assess it, and you have to spray it with these anti-aggregation pheromones.
Oh, okay, interesting. So it's still not something that would be a large scale fix.
Cost-benefit analysis, again, the interaction is really overcome the benefits from so much money you spend for these chemicals.
Interesting. Yeah, mountain pine beetle, what a hell of a problem, hey? Like, it's just...
Economic, ecological, we have a lot of urban areas in Alberta. So many rely on these pine trees, and unfortunately, the beetles really wipe them out.
Yeah, that's wild. So what's your current research looking like?
We do a lot of research on mountain pine beetle. Is one of the center actually in my research, but we look at the basic philosophy. When I came here from California, the idea was that, in order to understand the insects, you have to understand the trees. Right. You have to understand how they operate. Because in many cases, actually, plants really mediate their interactions with the insects and diseases. So my effort was really understanding their defense reactions. As I mentioned before, when the insect attacks, tree respond by producing toxic chemicals. They already have toxic chemicals.
Yeah.
But when they attack, they increase the concentrations of those toxic chemicals, or they start producing new chemicals.
Right.
They're effective, absolutely. They are toxic, and they can have a huge impact on the beetles. I mainly investigate why mountain pine beetle was successful invading jet pine.
Right.
We have some hypotheses on that. We also look at, with some of our collaborators, we look at what happens for stand conditions after beetle attacks. Right. We know that the trees, the trees have a lot of symbiotic organisms we call ectomycorrhizal fungi.
Right.
These fungi are really essential for the trees. From the seedling stage all the way to the maturity, they provide nutrients, water. They are extensions of the tree roots. Actually, they attach to the tree roots. So we're trying to understand what happens these symbiotic organizations. If the tree is losing, remember the pines are obligatory. They have to have a symbiotic relationship with this fungi, this symbiotic fungi, beneficial fungi. If you take away what happens, the trees become more susceptible to the insects and the diseases. That was our initial research suggested. Yeah.
So the mycorrhiza, this is something that came up. I don't know if you heard that TED talk where that woman was talking about. She did that study in BC. Studying mycorrhiza relationship between trees.
Suzanne Smith, yeah.
Yeah, Suzanne, yeah. And talking about, I found it interesting, but kind of weird, because the way she talked about it was that the fir was helping out the birch tree, right? And I found that a bit misleading, because realistically it's the mycorrhiza that's the symbiotic relationship with the trees. It's not like the, you know what I mean? Like, so different species of trees don't really have any reason to help each other out. It's just the fact that they share a mycorrhiza relationship. That's what's, or how does that work?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, would a fir tree literally help out a birch tree, or is it just that they both share the same mycorrhiza?
I really don't know their mycorrhizal communities, whether they share the same mycorrhiza or different mycorrhiza. I suspect that they are different genus, probably have a different fungal communities.
Right.
But this is the idea that is holding up really well, that plant species don't occur itself. They always have a community.
Right.
Usually triggered by what's happening in the soil. Tree roots, for example, we always consider them as a passive mediators of the soil. It's not. Tree roots are absolutely important for microbial community in the soil chemistry.
Yeah.
Soil chemistry is pretty much dictated by the tree roots, because tree roots exudates a lot of chemicals. Those chemicals can affect the microbes. Changes in microbes affect the chemistry. Have a lot of things. It's really triggered by the tree roots. So the question is, I don't think any single individual, including trees, they don't occur itself. They like more comfortable living with other type of trees, that they are more familiar with that.
Right. Like aspen.
Evolution doesn't evolve itself, really evolves as a community, not individual. Individual level, maybe trees evolve against mountain pine beetle, for example, pine trees, but they also associated with some spruce trees, some other birch trees, and this and that. This is a community. We really need to consider as a forest as a community, not the single individuals. They have their roles,
right,
but each community each individual in the community also have a role. We have a really little understanding of how this process works,
right,
but it's pretty much probably driven by this fungal interactions, I would say.
Yeah, the fungal, the mycorrhizal relationship with vegetation and trees is pretty fascinating when you think about it.
It is fascinating. These are the top of research, really. This is the most important research that people doing, understanding how the system works. Yeah. We used to look at what's happening above ground, but right now we put our head in the soil and see what's happening in the below ground, because you cannot ignore it. We really cannot ignore it.
Yeah, that's where all the magic happens, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, do you have any final thoughts regarding pine beetle, their life cycle management, anything like that you wanted to make sure that forest professionals and the public know?
I think we have to recognize the beetles are here to stay. I don't think they're going to disappear from the landscape, especially Western Alberta. They're going to be here. The problem is whether they're going to sustain their population in the Lac La Biche or the Jack Pine forest. That is the really big question. But there are some indications that probably they're going to sustain at the endemic level. 10 years, 20 years down the road, what happens, we don't know. Perhaps they're waiting really the perfect opportunity, such as drought. The drought is the really biggest issue in the eastern province than northern western province. That's exactly what happened for McMurray, right? There was a drought before the fire break. Yeah. And we've seen a lot of dead trees in northeast because of drought. And, Jack pines are resistant trees. They're better than lodgepole pine, but, they have also thresholds. Perhaps these beetles really waiting for that moment to come, and they're going to utilize and continue their journey eastward.
Yeah, and take off. That's something I don't even know how that didn't come up. But yeah, wildfire in relation to the mountain pine beetle outbreak is one of the biggest concerns, right? Like now we've got all these standing matchsticks in the middle of the bush that are just ready to go up in flames. It's super volatile, right? And it's I think that's another huge concern for forest management professionals, right?
Yes, it is. It is. Fire is a really important component of a beetle management or beetle biology, I will say. If the fire comes, some trees are killed.
Yeah.
Others are stressed.
Yeah.
Stressed trees usually attacked by mountain pine beetle. And the beetles build up their populations, start attacking healthy trees.
Yeah.
And during that process, they kill a number of trees, and the fire comes. And the process initiated, continues again. It's this never-ending cycle.
Yeah,
it is. We cannot avoid it. We can delay the problem with the fire exclusions, but we cannot really get rid of the problem.
No.
We start seeing more and more and more intensive fires, more frequent, and when they happen in a big, large scales.
Yeah,
well, not just here, everywhere.
Well, especially with British Columbia having 80% of its pine beetle, or if it's pine dead from beetle, standing there dry, ready to burn. If that goes up, it seems like the whole thing's just going to go in one massive fire.
Oh yeah,
right?
Last year we had a lot of massive smoke came from BC. That's not only BC. I drove through the Montana, Wyoming. Montana is literally smoke.
Yeah,
all the beetle kill trees burning and non-beetle trees from the Washington area and Oregon is flying down all the way, and Montana too. It's really, really bad.
Right. Well, like BC had one of their largest fire years ever last year. And
absolutely.
So
I'm not surprised.
I wonder how much of that burnt was beetle killed.
I won't be surprised if it's a larger portions.
Yeah.
Again, we can delay the problem with the fire exclusion, but you cannot stop the problem. Problem is there.
Yeah.
Just getting bigger. Just getting bigger.
It's a crazy situation, but. Thanks a lot for coming on. This is awesome.
It's my pleasure.
We talked about a lot of different things, so I think people have a lot of better understanding of it.
Yes, exactly. I also give my email address if the people have any questions. My name is Nadir Erbilgin. My last name is Erbilgin @ualberta.ca. If you have any questions about forest insects or anything, please let me know.
Yep, and shoot me an email too, yourforestpodcast@gmail.com, and I can send it to Nadir as well. And don't forget to rate and review. It really, really helped me out. Rate and review it. Share it with your friends. Tell somebody about it. Come on, guys. It's free. You're getting it for free. Help me out. I appreciate it. I'm trying to get this message out there. I think that there's a lot of good information here that people will really enjoy if they know it exists. So I appreciate your guys' help. Thanks for listening, and I really look forward to talking to you guys next time. Thanks a lot.